And I guess the rest of you guys, I wake up every day and I think, can it possibly, for a new government, get any worse?
Yeah.
I mean, this guy spent months and years talking about the Tories were scum and their noses were in the trough, and we're going to do government differently. We're going to do it for everybody. Lady Victoria Sponge, we love that.
That's a good one.
She's had £5,000. This week, Rosie Duffield, who I actually think should be absolutely celebrated. I will be slaughtered by the transgender community. Really, honesty and integrity.
Yeah.
Two great moments this week. Apart from, by the way, another 16 grand's worth of clothes that I forgot about. This is a woman who stood up and said, you know, I defend women's rights to have their own spaces to change. That's their right.
Labour is facing a crisis of confidence, and Rosie Duffield's resignation has brought it into sharp focus. But what's the solution to a party divided against itself? In this video, we'll not only break down the problems highlighted by Duffield's departure, but also explore potential paths forward for Labour. Can the party heal its internal rifts?
Arrogant, just terrible. I am walking out. No response at all. New Prime Minister. Within 12 weeks, Rosie Duffield does one. I think that speaks. Rosie Duffield resigned. So you fight an election under a Labour banner, and 12 weeks later, you come out and you say, I am so appalled by the leadership. The leadership that is greedy, doesn't care about the working man and woman.
How arrogant they are, because they more or less said, good riddance. You know, well, we didn't really like you much anyway.
Or is this the beginning of the end for Starmer's leadership? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Rosie Duffield's journey from loyal Labour MP to outspoken critic is a tale of disillusionment that's rocking the party to its core. But who exactly is Duffield? And why should we care about her resignation? Elected as the MP for Canterbury in 2017, Duffield was seen as a rising star within Labour. She made history by becoming the first ever Labour MP to represent Canterbury, a seat that had been Conservative for nearly a century. Her background as a single mother and former teaching assistant resonated with voters.
Because that's not the only money.
Why do you need 32 grand's worth of clothes?
Yeah.
I know what he's doing with the money.
Do you?
Yeah, no comment.
How can she not be right?
Yes.
About what
I think she's an admirable politician.
Yeah. And isn't it about time that we had politicians that actually stood by, you know, those things we used to call principles?
Yeah,
absolutely.
But let's ask that question. You know, what on earth is he doing with all the money?
Not still here, is he? But like, was he making the suits himself personally? I mean, using little mice? I mean, it's just extra. I mean, I'm picturing a fairy tale here. Lord Ali had given Keir Starmer for clothes. I mean, how big is this man's wardrobe, by the way? I mean, where are these suits coming from, for God's sake? You know, it's Versace.
And she quickly gained a reputation for speaking her mind on issues close to her heart. Initially, Duffield was a strong supporter of Keir Starmer. She saw him as a breath of fresh air after Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, believing Starmer could unite the party and appeal to a broader range of voters. Her faith in Starmer seemed justified when she increased her majority in the 2019 election.
But instead, now he's in office, well, he's spending his time having to deal with questions over how many Arsenal matches he's been gifted and who's paid for his wife's clothes. It's a bit like a giant game of whack-a-mole. He's being buffeted by a row over freebies and donations. Now, we know what he wants to talk about, his missions. That's what he campaigned on, of course, during that election campaign.
Bucking the national trend of Labour losses. But as time went on, cracks began to appear in Duffield's relationship with the party leadership. She became increasingly vocal about issues where she felt Labour was falling short, particularly on women's rights and the definition of gender. Her willingness to challenge the party line made her a controversial figure within Labour, but it also earned her respect from those who appreciated her principled stance. The brewing conflict between Duffield and the Labour leadership became more apparent with each passing month. She found herself at odds with the party's stance on multiple issues, from trans rights to the handling of anti-Semitism allegations.
He's received a lot. Look at this, £107,000. In fact, even more than that. That's the total gifts and hospitality he has registered since the start of the last Parliament. He has accepted more freebies by far than anyone else, 2.5 times more than the second highest claimer of freebies. Holidays, theatre, music, football tickets, hotel stays, all within the rules, Downing Street says. But now look at this from our spreadsheets. Compared to every other current MP, Keir Starmer comes top of the chart.
Duffield's outspoken nature made her a frequent target of criticism from within her own party, but it also elevated her profile as a fearless advocate for her beliefs. As Starmer's leadership progressed, Duffield's disillusionment grew. She began to question whether the Labour Party under Starmer truly represented the values she had fought for throughout her political career. The first signs of her dissatisfaction became public when she started openly criticising party decisions on social media and in interviews. One particularly telling moment came when Duffield publicly disagreed with Labour's position on the Gender Recognition Act. In a move that shocked many within the party, she stated, "I feel strongly that women's rights are at risk of being undermined by misguided policies and ideologies." This growing rift between Duffield and the party leadership set the stage for what was to come. As tensions continued to simmer, it became clear that something had to give. The political world held its breath, wondering how long Duffield could continue to voice her dissent from within the party ranks. Little did anyone know that Duffield was about to drop a bombshell that would send shockwaves through the Labour Party and beyond. Her resignation wasn't just a personal decision, it was a scathing indictment of Starmer's leadership and the direction of the party as a whole. But what exactly pushed Duffield to take this drastic step? While Duffield's resignation sent shockwaves through Labour, the real bombshell was the revelation of Starmer's lavish lifestyle. His acceptance of luxury gifts worth over $17,000 since the start of the last Parliament painted a picture of a leader increasingly out of touch with the struggles of ordinary people.
Since the change of government in July, the revelations of hypocrisy have been staggering, Rosie Duffield says, and increasingly outrageous. "I cannot put into words how angry I and my colleagues are at your total lack of understanding."
But was this extravagance the only reason for Duffield's dramatic exit? Starmer's journey from promising new leader to embattled figurehead is a tale of broken promises and questionable choices. When he took the reins of the Labour Party, Starmer pledged to restore trust, unite the party, and offer a credible opposition to the Conservatives. He promised a fresh start, vowing to learn from the mistakes of the past and present a vision that would resonate with voters across the country. However, as time went on, Starmer's actions began to diverge from his promises. The controversy surrounding his acceptance of expensive gifts became a lightning rod for criticism. It wasn't just the $17,000 worth of freebies that raised eyebrows, it was the nature of these gifts that truly shocked many Labour supporters. VIP tickets to exclusive events, luxury clothing, and other high-end perks seemed wildly at odds with Labour's supposed commitment to fighting inequality and standing up for working people. The public reaction was swift and brutal. Many voters saw Starmer's acceptance of these gifts as a betrayal of Labour's core values. How could a leader who claimed to understand the struggles of ordinary Britons be so comfortable accepting lavish perks? The optics were disastrous, especially at a time when many families were struggling with the cost of living crisis. Within the party, the reaction was equally damning. Many Labour MPs, including Duffield, were furious at the hypocrisy on display. They saw Starmer's actions as undermining everything the party was supposed to stand for. The contrast between Starmer's rhetoric about supporting the vulnerable and his apparent comfort with luxury freebies was stark and deeply troubling to many within Labour's ranks. Duffield's scathing criticism of Starmer's behaviour cut to the heart of the matter. In a blistering statement, she asked, "Forcing a vote to make many older people iller and colder, while you and your favourite colleagues enjoy free family trips to events most people would have to save hard for. Why are you not showing even the slightest bit of embarrassment?" Her words echoed the sentiments of many Labour supporters who felt betrayed by Starmer's actions. Starmer's response to the controversy only seemed to make matters worse. While he announced that ministers would no longer accept donations for clothing, he left open the possibility of receiving access to events. This half-hearted attempt at damage control did little to quell the growing discontent within the party. As the Labour conference approached, the controversy surrounding Starmer's gifts overshadowed everything else. The party found itself embroiled in a crisis of confidence, with Duffield's resignation serving as a powerful symbol of the growing rift between the leadership and the grassroots. While Starmer's freebies were grabbing headlines, a far more insidious problem was taking root within Labour. The party's new policies were about to betray its most vulnerable supporters. How could Rosie Duffield stand by and watch it happen? The answer, as it turns out, was that she couldn't. Duffield's breaking point came as Labour adopted a series of policies that seemed to fly in the face of everything the party once stood for. At the heart of the controversy was the two-child benefit cap, a policy that limits child benefit payments to only the first two children in a family. This cap, originally introduced by the Conservatives, has been widely criticised for its disproportionate impact on low-income families. It's a policy that essentially punishes children for being born into large families, pushing many into poverty. Labour had long opposed this cap, promising to scrap it if they came to power. But under Starmer's leadership, the party made a shocking U-turn, announcing they would keep the policy in place if elected. For Duffield, this wasn't just a policy disagreement, it was a betrayal of Labour's core values. How could a party that claimed to stand up for the vulnerable now support a policy that would plunge more children into poverty? It was a question that Duffield couldn't reconcile, and it marked the beginning of the end of her time in the party. But the two-child benefit cap wasn't the only policy causing friction. Changes to the winter fuel payment also came under fire. Labour's new stance on this crucial support for older people during the cold months left many, including Duffield, questioning the party's commitment to its traditional base. In her scathing resignation letter, Duffield didn't mince words. She asked, forcing a vote to make many older people iller and colder, while you and your favourite colleagues enjoy free family trips to events most people would have to save hard for. Why are you not showing even the slightest bit of embarrassment? It was a damning indictment of Starmer's leadership, highlighting the growing divide between the party's actions and its supposed values. Duffield's passionate defence of her constituents against these policies resonated with many Labour supporters. She argued that these weren't just abstract policy decisions, but choices that would have real, devastating impacts on vulnerable families and elderly individuals struggling to make ends meet. As the rift between Duffield and the party leadership grew, it became clear that this was about more than just individual policy disagreements. It was a fundamental clash over the very identity and purpose of the Labour Party. Was Labour still the party of the working class, committed to lifting people out of poverty, or had it lost its way under Starmer's leadership? Labour finds itself at a crossroads, with Duffield's departure exposing cracks in its foundation. History shows that moments like these can redefine political landscape, so the question on everyone's mind, is this the beginning of Labour's reinvention or the start of its downfall? The immediate reactions to Duffield's resignation within Labour have been a mix of shock, anger and soul-searching. Some party members have rallied around Starmer, dismissing Duffield's criticisms as sour grapes. Others, however, are taking her words to heart, wondering if she's given voice to concerns they've long harboured but were afraid to express. The potential ripple effects on party unity and public perception are impossible to ignore. Duffield's scathing attack on Starmer's leadership has provided ample ammunition for Labour's opponents. The Conservatives are already using her words in attack ads, painting Labour as a party in disarray. Meanwhile, smaller parties like the Greens and Liberal Democrats are seizing the opportunity to court disillusioned Labour voters. Perhaps most telling are the calls for Duffield to trigger a by-election. These demands, coming from within Labour itself, reveal a deeper anxiety about the party's direction. Nadia Whittome, another Labour MP, didn't mince words when she said Duffield should have had the whip removed long ago. This sentiment suggests that Duffield's departure might be seen by some as addition by subtraction, a chance to present a more unified front to voters. But what does all this mean for Starmer's leadership and Labour's election prospects? On the surface, losing an outspoken critic might seem like a win for Starmer. However, Duffield's resignation has brought long-simmering tensions within the party to the forefront. Starmer now faces the unenviable task of trying to unite a fractured party while also appealing to a skeptical electorate. Looking ahead, several scenarios could play out. Starmer might double down on his centrist approach, hoping to win over moderate voters while risking further alienation of the party's left wing. Alternatively, he could attempt a pivot, incorporating some of Duffield's criticisms into a revised party platform. Or, if the internal pressure becomes too great, we might even see a leadership challenge emerge. Expert predictions on how this event might reshape Labour's strategy are varied. Some political analysts believe this could be a wake-up call for Starmer, forcing him to reassess his leadership style and policy positions. Others see it as the beginning of the end for his tenure as party leader, predicting that more resignations could follow if significant changes aren't made. Rosie Duffield's resignation has sent shockwaves through Labour, exposing deep rifts within the party and raising serious questions about its future. Her scathing critique of Keir Starmer's leadership has not only damaged Labour's public image, but also highlighted the growing disconnect between the party's supposed values and its actions. The fallout from this resignation could have far-reaching consequences for British politics, potentially reshaping the landscape as we approach the next general election. What's next for Labour? Can Starmer weather this storm and unite a fractured party, Or is this the beginning of the end for his leadership? And what about the broader implications for political parties in the UK? Duffield's departure serves as a stark reminder of the challenges parties face in maintaining unity and credibility in an era of increasing political polarisation and public scrutiny. As Labour grapples with these issues, one thing is clear: the path forward won't be easy. The party must find a way to reconcile its internal divisions, regain the trust of its base, and present a compelling vision to the electorate. Whether they can rise to this challenge remains to be seen, but the stakes couldn't be higher. The future of Labour, and perhaps the shape of British politics itself, hangs in the balance.